Live from Austin, Texas, broadcasting worldwide, it's Alex Jones.
Coming up in the next segment with him, I'm going to play a short clip from Fox, and I've got other British news saying, the same thing. We had this guy on a year ago, and the mainstream meteorologists and media were predicting basically hardly any winter, the end of snow, and he went in on our show, and he's a meteorologist and astrophysicist, and I've looked at his record. I mean, he's paid by different farmer almanacs, you name it, to really give farmers the real research. What the old-timers knew, they didn't understand it. They just knew the moon had a big effect on the weather, as basically a lensing or amplifying effect with the solar winds that sends in so many particles into the atmosphere. Then there's the other big contributor, which is the magnetic field of the Earth, but it's also affected by the solar winds. Mainline meteorologists supposedly ignore all this and use these ridiculous computer models that the science has found is about as accurate as a Ouija board or a Wheel of Fortune. But Piers Corbyn, year after year after year, and it's all chronicled at weatheraction.com, is accurate, a lot more accurate than the mainstream. And he predicted the coldest winter in a long time, massive snowfall, when it would hit, what would happen. And ladies and gentlemen, he did this almost a year out. I mean, this is incredible. And he does it over and over again, following the old-timer systems, which they didn't know why it was. They just knew the moon had to do with it. And he joins us, Piers Corbyn, to talk about what's happening now and what he sees happening coming up throughout the summer and next year, or is that too early to tell? Piers Corbyn, congratulations again on stunning accuracy.
Thanks very much. It's great to be here.
Well, you got the floor. We've only got you for 20 minutes. Tell us what's currently happening, how you predicted it, how it works, and what's coming up next.
Well, last May, we said at a conference, an energy conference, that December in Britain would be cold and snowy. We didn't give any more detail than that, but then in November we put out a detailed forecast saying that we expected it would be the coldest December for 100 years. Nobody believed us. And that is, in fact, exactly what happened. In fact, it's the central England temperatures are the second coldest in the full record of 352 years.
I'm going to have to interrupt you, Piers. I'm sorry. You were here in May of last year, and people can go to my YouTube channel or prisonplanet.tv and watch it. You said on the east coast of the U.S., incredible snowfall, freezing, Canada snowed in. You predicted a super cold winter. I mean, you're really...
Yes.
Really playing down what you did.
Well, that's true. Yes, it's true. Fair enough. I was also going to add that we did. We predicted the very specific blizzard which hit New York just after Christmas, and we put out a detailed forecast for that 2 weeks ahead. Although we'd had obviously ideas longer ahead. But well,
what is the truth? I mean, some news is saying the coldest in 1,000 years, but we don't have good records of that. Others are saying in 300. I mean, what's your evidence show? I mean, does this mark sliding into a new ice age, as many astrophysicists and meteorologists believe?
Yes, of course. Standard meteorology will just say everything's going to go back to the norm. Now, we say, well, in Europe and in many parts of America, for sure, it's going to carry on extremely cold in January and February. Our longer range view is that we are heading towards a mini ice age, and we'll be well into that. It'll be at its coldest in about 25 years' time. We're going to see more of these cold or very cold winters with extraordinary blizzards in them, and more lousy summers, both in Britain and Europe and in the USA.
Okay. Again, you're the true expert on this. How is your perspective on approaching the science so much different than mainline meteorology? I mean, I know you've broken that down before, but explain that to people, and then let's continue discussing what's happening this year and what you see coming next year.
Okay. Standard meteorology looks at the weather now, sees how everything's moving, and then says, well, if that's moving towards this, something will happen, and then it will do this and that, and they can predict forwards. However, after about 4 days, it breaks down, and it becomes very inaccurate. The reason for that is there's external influences driven from the sun and the moon interrupting the flow of charged particles from the sun. Now, this solar-lunar influence dictates the changes in the jet stream, which are the change in weather patterns. And what we've had in the last 6 months especially, and it's going to carry on this year, is significant jet stream blockings, whereby the jet stream is kept in more or less the same place for a while. And that has caused the super heat wave in Russia, for example, which we predicted, and we predicted when it would end. Caused the floods in Pakistan, and similarly we
I know, you predicted everything. You're a regular...
No, not everything.
No, I mean, I remember you in May of last year laying so much of this out. I mean, it's incredible.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, we are very pleased. We want to be able to predict everything. As it is, 85% of what we say will happen does happen, but there's a lot of things we haven't yet got a handle on. But some very interesting things going on right now, where it's now obvious that the Queensland floods, if you look at them, the most likely floods have all happened, the biggest floods, in the same phase of the eclipse cycle. Namely, there was an eclipse of the sun on January the 4th, which was near to the peak of this current wave of floods. And the previous waves of floods, very significant ones, were in 1954, 1973, 1992, or thereabouts, which are all separated by 19 years, which is the eclipse cycle. So there was also solar eclipses on around the 4th of January, those times as well. And
so just like a wind tunnel...
Solar effect is why you get the floods.
But I mean, for laymen out there, like a wind tunnel, I mean... So when the moon is basically directly lined up with the solar winds blocking them, what does that generally result in?
It is moronic, yes. But you see, they can't cope with what to do, and they don't know how to put it in. I mean, they could be a lot more intelligent and make applications, but you see... if they were to follow what we say, namely that the main drivers of all these things are external, is the sun and the moon, then they're going to have to ditch their man-made climate change theory, and that is the core of their belief system. So the Met Office in Britain now has even got to the stage where they put on the website it was going to be a mild winter. Then it was cold. So then they announced that they'd actually thought it was going to be cold and had told the government this. Now, this is just unbelievable. I just don't believe them, frankly. It's very possible they put out two forecasts and afterwards they would say which one they really believed in. Obviously the one that was right. But this is complete nonsense and bullshit. And they'll do anything to say that, in fact, it's all caused by CO2. I mean, they come up with cooling is warming. Somehow CO2 has caused some warming somewhere, which has caused a change in circulation, which has caused these blasts of cold air. Well, it's complete nonsense because we can predict these blasts. They're caused by solar lunar influences. Nothing whatsoever to do
Unbelievable.
with carbon dioxide.
Unbelievable. Stay there. Piers Corbyn coming back with us. We'll look into the rest of 2011 into 2012, what his yearly forecast is this time. I know it's a little early, but he'll be ready in the next few months. We'll get an early take from him on the other side. This is just such important information, obviously. We're really honored to have Piers Corbyn of WeatherAction.com on with us from England. Very busy guy. I twisted his arm to stay till 45 after because this is a short segment. And I don't normally gush at guests. It's just somebody who even mainstream media has to admit has about an 85% accuracy rate in year-out forecasting. I mean, they can't get anything right here in Austin past 2 or 3, 4 days. So they can track a weather system and pretty much get down what it's going to do, but they can't track the larger areas. And so because they want to push man-made global warming, they have this quackery that the moon and the sun, and they said that last year at Copenhagen, an official UN declaration that the sun does not affect climate. The sun is the driver. Is it not astrophysicist, meteorologist Piers Corbyn?
That's right. The sun drives it, and the main climate driver is through magnetic effects involving charged particles modulated by lunar influences. And the main cycles of weather observed on Earth are, in fact, solar-lunar driven. The 60-year cycle in the Pacific temperatures and American temperatures is a solar-lunar effect, and that modulates, if you like, the main magnetic effect, which is a 22-year cycle of world temperatures.
So what is the current cycle point we're in right now, and what do you see coming up in the next 12 months?
Right. What we've got now is we're leaving the solar minimum. We've left solar cycle 23, and we're in the start of solar cycle 24, and it's been hiccuping in its starting, and it's a lot of solar activity has tended to be low, and at the same time we're in a very fortuitous, if you like, lunar phase in the eclipse cycle of the moon, where we've just had some eclipses, and these appear to be accentuating the blocking tendencies of the jet stream, which we predict, and these blocking tendencies are very important for extreme events, like they're leading to these extreme cold situations in Britain and Europe, and your major blizzards and cold blasts in America. They also lead to very warm bits in different parts at times, but the key thing is right now the extreme cold experienced. And these extreme blockings are going to continue through January and February and right through the year. So we'll see a lot of extreme type of things, a lot more cold spells than the global warmers would like us to have. And it will generally look like a kind of different weather situation where we'll go through this year compared with previous years. We've entered some sort of pretty fundamental shift, I would say, in weather patterns.
Again, here's my simpleton question. Obviously, the moon is involved in the same orbits and gyrations and is stable, but the sun, do we have any idea on its short cycles? Obviously not its long cycles. So it looks to me like that's a major variable in that the sun is fluctuating and we don't know. So we have to always understand that's the big wild card, because though even the ancients understood the relationship with the moon and the sea and the overall weather, isn't the sun the big wild card?
Well, yes and no. There's a lot of things on the sun which are happening, which we can't see, but we nevertheless know they happen and change the way in which the solar wind gets to us and the magnetic linkages, and we can predict some of those very well. Like we know there's certainly going to be shock waves, if you like, in the solar wind, some of which will help blocking and give us, for example, a cold blast in Britain or America if the blocking is in a certain place, and others lead to the jet stream being more mobile and it generally wetter and milder in the northern hemisphere, and we can distinguish between these two types of effect. Generally speaking. In terms of activity on the sun, I mean, an important thing is it spins around on its axis, so something that happened 27 days ago may come back in 27 days, every 27 days, because it spins relative to the Earth in 27 days. But at the same time, it changes on its surface, so you can't rely on that. But solar flares come in bursts of typically every 155 days on average, which is quite an important thing. There's many cycles and subcycles on the sun.
So we do know a lot about it. Okay, stay there. I want to come back and talk more about the sun. I want to talk about jet streams and a lot more with Piers Corbyn of WeatherAction.com. I'm Alex Jones of Infowars.com. Our final segment with our guest. Straight ahead. Stay with us.